Okay, this is chapter 38 of the book God dictated to me. Just as he dictated the Torah to Moses and the entirety of the Hebrew Bible to various men, such as the 20 plus prophets. They didn't write, and believe me, I can show you that it's undeniable. That they, I'm sure the Orthodox, the Orthodox Jews who believe God dictated the Torah to Moses, the primary reason must be, how could he have known these things if God didn't tell him to? And of course, all the stories have God talking to him. But you really don't see that in the Hebrew Bible, even though your prophets, in the book of the prophets, say his words. God, the word of the Lord came to me and said, God says, or God just speaks, and it's written down. They were all commanded and directed to do that. Now, the Orthodox call it dictation. It was not strict dictation like an attorney to his secretary. But that's close enough. Bottom line is, every word in this book that I'm putting the 50 chapters on video, again, I've already done it once, but it was about 2 years ago, and I've reposted them so many times, re-downloaded and re-uploaded, that they're just not a good quality to look at or listen to. So, and all these chapters, if you went to my YouTube site and look at the last picture, I put a different picture for every 50, but it's grown to about 100 right now. But you can find the actual books from this Isaiah 53 and the Day of the Lord. They're in parentheses before you see the title. And it says, from God's new book, or from God's new book, Isaiah 53 and the Day of the Lord, if there's room for it. And I plan on, when I get through redoing about 100 I have now, and I'm still adding, I'm going to do the next picture of a temple. And if you go to my YouTube sites, you can see all these. And I'm going to pull those out myself. When I repost them, I'm just going to repost the ones that are in parentheses that are specifically in this book. Okay, this is real interesting. And of course, I just did a video on Rambam, Maimonides, the son of the prophet. And I've also mentioned to you how you have to learn, and especially the rabbis, how to read the Bible with the knowledge that it's written for antiquity first. And that's why you'll find something like chapter 37 of Ezekiel, rise, old bones, rise. The rising of the dead. But that's not for us. Because in chapters 1 and 10 of Ezekiel, you see spiritual heaven. The eyes on the wheel works are the spirits of the Jewish people. Because in 1 and 10 go together. The wheel works rise up to the house of God, and God is there. Spiritual heaven. So you see, you have to look for it. Now that's like the biggest example, but you can literally find it in chapters. And some of the examples are in here and in the book, and they're on videos. Some people might prefer just to read the book. Almost nobody does. But I like doing the videos. And it helps me have my thought on it all. From the Rambam's Jewish Practices and Rituals, the Laws of the Basic Principles of the Torah, chapter 10. Chapter 10, number 1. And this is in quotes. We will tell him, this is the sign of the prophet, we will tell him to predict the future because he is a prophet, which he does, and we wait to see if what he says happens or not. Even if it was wrong in only a small matter, he is a false prophet. But if all of what he said comes true, then he is believed. Now, if you're just watching this video for the first time, you should go back and watch the video that says Lemonades, Rambam. It's in the 30s, early 30s. Because this is what I'm talking about. People in antiquity, in the Middle Ages, particularly the early Middle Ages, believed that that was definition of a prophet. That he could see the future. A seer. S-E-E-R. There's no such thing. And for the most part here, in the modern era, of the common era, most people don't believe that. You know, what you really had in a time of illiteracy, there's always a few smart guys in there. And they just knew this is going to happen, and I'm going to go tell these fools that I'm seeing it as a prophet and seer. But that's not what a prophet is. No, God's taught me. A prophet is somebody that his spirit alights upon. God is in his spirit. He becomes a man of divine beings. And we find in Joshua that means a host of the Lord's host. And then he manipulates your mind such that you're having visions, so to speak, of a conversation with him. Your voice, his voice, back and forth. That's a prophet. If you talk to God, if you write his words, but it has nothing to do with foreseeing the future. And that'll be in here in a little bit. You'll see what I'm talking about. But that's the problem with Rambam. And, you know, I seen Michael Skoback come out for Jews for Judaism on YouTube and saying, our sages say. Yeah, what do you say, Rabbi? Because you're teaching man's word over there. I see a lot of Rambam coming out, and you, Antovi is saying Messianic era, world exaltation. Show it to me in the Hebrew Bible. Show me how 2 billion Christians are going to disavow Jesus and come worship you. And say, you've been right about God all along, and that's to convert to Judaism. Oh, let's form 2 lines. You got to have those 2 billion Muslims practicing Islam, disavowing Allah, right? You think that's going to happen? You think that's going to happen? Your Messianic era requires it. And you teach this stuff like it's in the Bible. You fool your false teachers. You fool your followers. God's livid about it. And it's been a great hindrance for him to get me recognized for who I am. At the same time, it's been a help. Because a lot of your followers are, I'm getting a lot more views than I used to, put it that way. It's going to come around. And I'm going to end up on top. Jews for Judaism, Kravitz, Skoback, y'all better come correct. You better go to your flock and start teaching this book. Tell them, get humble. God wants to see if you can get humble. I told him I don't think it's possible. He said, well, we'll see. So he didn't tell me the future. He won't tell me anything in the future. God knows what's in the future, not because he can see the future. It's his absolute knowledge. He can, in his mind, create the whole evolution of humanity over time. You know, from antiquity to the industrial age to the times of the computers and on and on. He just knows how to unfold with absolute knowledge. So there really is no seer. There's no one that can just see the future, per se. From chapter 10, number 5. If a prophet says about another prophet that he is indeed a prophet, so you have a known prophet, and he points at somebody else and says he's a prophet too. then he is assumed to be a prophet. Excuse me. And the prophet who said it does not have to be cross-examined. Again, he's just making this up. This is not in the Hebrew Bible, people. This is just beliefs in his times that he believed in. The righteous servant of God of Isaiah 53 is a prophet who serves God with devotion to his purpose. He is the fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah 52 and 53 and 11. Moshiach. By his description, he is not a prophet who predicts the future like a seer. He is a servant, just like Moses and Joshua, and like Elijah and Elisha. You don't ever see Moses predicting the future, and therefore they recognized him when he went to get the Israelites out of bondage in Egypt. There was none of that. He didn't have to prove he could see the future. This is, again, be sure to watch the video on Rambam. I point out a lot of things he gets wrong. But I also note that for his time, he was about the best there was. From chapter 5, chapter 10, also number 5, Moses vouched for Joshua, and all of Israel believed in him before he performed a sign. Isaiah vouches for God's righteous servant by describing him. It's another reason you know I'm a prophet. If you would believe this, the fact is, I couldn't write this book. I was an atheist for 50 years, and no rabbi or sage has ever had the knowledge that's in this book. Believe me, I'm teaching them. And they're starting to come around a little bit. There's a few of them that want to go to the scroll of remembrance and see the Jewish heaven and come correct with their false teachings. They're going to see how good this book is. And that the only way it got written, just like Moses saying, Israelite comes to him and says, Moses, how do we know God's talking to you? Moses could pull out the scroll of Leviticus and say, read that. You think I came up with that on my own? Because if you did, you're as big a fool as there is out here. And we got a lot of people. Of course I couldn't do it. These are God's laws. He had to tell me. That's how you know. This is how you know he's talking to me. I can't do this. I didn't even know Jesus died for sins when God spoke to me when I was 50 years old. Though he had been with me since birth and orchestrated my life to fit 53. The man's blemished. He's afflicted by God. He's got a birth defect. That's me. And you know why he wrote that into 53? Because he knew what the Gentiles were going to do with their unblemished lamb. So he wrote 53 so it could not be used. Nor Leviticus, an unblemished lamb for a sin offering. Of course, in Leviticus, it's unintentional sins. But that's where it comes from. That's why they call it the unblemished lamb. And yet it's specifically written that you cannot use it. Full of scars, egregious wounds. Yeah, that's me. I got over 20 surgical scars. Anyway, all this information's in the life of the righteous servant, and I've got it in lots of videos. Cancer. That's why he chooses to crush, 53:10, chose to crush the righteous servant with disease. Now, he doesn't do that with Ezekiel, and he goes through the fire of refinement too. But that's why. So I said, wait a second, God, are you telling me that I had to suffer those 3 cancers? And the colon cancer was just brutal. To make a point to Christians that Jesus can't be 53. He can't be. Nor can he be 11. And there's video on that. He doesn't come from the stump of Jesse. He comes from the felled tree, not the stump. The kings of Judah, they were banished. Isaiah vouches for God's righteous servant by describing him, the unnamed man who fulfills all the verses, is a prophet of God, and all the people are to believe in him. Again, based on Rambam's knowledge, but that's not what it is. My book says I'm a prophet of God, that God talks to me. I got a lot. He's been with me 16 years, people. We finished writing this book 5 years ago or something like that. We didn't start putting that on video until around the time COVID started. From chapter 10, 5. So you can't just rely on all this. And yet they teach, anything Rambam says, they teach it as though they, the rabbis, Jews for Judaism, Singer, and no telling how many more. They act like this is God talking. And it's not. And he doesn't like it. It conflicts with what he says. It makes up stuff he doesn't have anything to do with. Then one of these people believing that a prophet is a seer, a foreteller of the future. It is forbidden to doubt or debate the prophecy of a prophet who has found to be right time and time again, or the prophecy of a prophet who has been vouched for by another prophet. And it is also forbidden to test him excessively or forever. For one who tests him is like one who tests God. For it is written, do not test the Lord your God as you tested him in Massah. When he said, when we said, is the Lord among us or not? I think they needed water. Once it has become known that he is a prophet, they will believe and know that God is amongst them, and they will not debate or doubt his work in accordance with what is written. Yet they shall know that there has been a prophet amongst them. Well, there is one. And so is God. And so is the angel of his presence, the Holy Spirit, who is a person, Judaism. He talks in the Hebrew Bible. He takes Ezekiel on a vision with God specifically left out of it, standing on a hill east of Jerusalem. Inside, the Spirit tells Ezekiel, I'm going to take you on a vision. And Judaism's belief is he's not a person. Isaiah 63 is where you see angel of his presence and the Holy Spirit in two verses that go together. He can be grieved. And if you know he's the angel, that's the angel sent before the Israelites God was talking about. He can get angry and he won't forgive you. That's a person. Remember, I'm not a religious person. I was an atheist for 50 years. I had nothing to do with religion or religious people. So I'm dumbfounded by all this. God started speaking to me when I'm 50. And he controls your emotions, by the way. I didn't get all excited about it. I didn't go, who's that? None of that happened. It was like he'd been with me, like I was Adam in the Garden of Eden. But that's just the natural state of the world. God talking to you. I was just, I was nonplussed by it. It's in the life of the righteous servant. I think it's chapter 7. Anyway, I'm to be believed because of this book. And Moses didn't have this. It never says, God will tell him, go tell the Israelites this. He never says, Moses, write this down. But if he hadn't said, write this down, we wouldn't have it. And Moses would have forgotten it by the time he gathered everybody. God's purpose with his righteous servant does not include the prophecy of future events. He is a teacher of righteousness in the day of the Lord, as Elijah and of Isaiah 53, and as Elijah. I told you, 4 righteous servants to come, one description of a righteous servant that fits me. I handle the duties of all 4. And what else does Elijah do? He recounsels families of the Jewish people, one to the other, together through Judaism. He writes the words of God at God's command and directions, the prophet like Moses. That's me. I got 2 books. And as the anointed one of God, that God calls my servant David, he brings the covenant of friendship and will be involved with securing the Temple Mount for the 3rd temple. And I can be. Because he doesn't want it on the Temple Mount. He wants it on Mount Zion. Jerusalem preferably. I don't know if there's a big enough track inside of Jerusalem. I'm just not that familiar with it. But, you know, that's why the Temple Mount is so important. Is that David, as a restitution to God for failing in some of his commands, and he took a census. And for whatever reason, that made God very mad, and God put him to 3 tests, and he failed the test. And he went and purchased the Temple Mount, he said. I'm an attorney. I'm not an intellectual, I'm not brilliant. I had to work my tail off to get through law school. I had to work my tail off to get out of high school. Actually, if I hadn't been shot through my abdomen, I would have never graduated high school. That's what woke me up. You got to stop fooling around, kid. Life can be very short. Because I should have died. But I should have died of colon cancer. Should have died of lung cancer. That's another part of 53:10 I had fulfilled. God chose to crush him with disease, but he shall receive long life and see his children. Which, of course, can't be Jesus either. And there's a thing that he would offer himself for guilt, but that's a whole other conversation, and it's in plenty of the videos. And as a matter of fact, I'll be getting to it again here in about 3 more chapters. And in addition, you know, Elijah is the one that cleared the way for him. The messenger of Malachi 3, which means, you know, his purpose in 53 with the righteous servant is a purpose that might prosper. But he doesn't tell us what it is. When you get to Malachi 3, you know what it is. He says, I'm returning to my temple. Your rabbi should be going, you know, we better get a temple up. What if he does come back? He says if his temple's not here, he's going to bring utter destruction to the land of Israel. We got 7 million Israeli Jews. How many do you think that would kill? 6 million? Does that ring a bell? Do your rabbis tell you about it? Did they tell you they've been reckoned with and dismissed when Moshiach is here? Which is right now. If you want your rabbi, any Jewish people watching, and I know there's plenty, you need to tell them what's going on here. Get them to read the book. I won't talk to anybody, particularly rabbis, until they read my proofs. Because nobody's going to believe my words. God gave me these proofs. It's the books. It's my knowledge of heaven as Elijah. Only man taken to heaven, and he comes back in the day of the Lord. They're not going to see heaven if they don't start straightening out all this. God wants Judaism out of antiquity and into the modern era and stop looking like fools. As you see in every other religion has got a Messianic era of some sort, heaven on earth. Every one of them. I'll tell you one thing. It's what the people want to hear, and it gets you bigger donations. That's a factor. And what's happening? I can't get to Israel. That means God came. He's inside of me. Okay? His spirit in him. 3 persons in one body. It is an incredible experience, and my stories will go forever. Because it's been going on day and night for 16 years. This whole fire refinement, everything we've been through. I have got stories. People would just love to go to dinner with me and just ask me questions. But if I say anything, they say, Toby, a singer, says Isaiah 53 is Israel. That's it. You know, and you can't tell them. You need to go read his commentary backing that up, because it's a bunch of garbage. It's an absurdity. It's as though he made it up. He's too intelligent not to know that Israel just cannot fit. I don't know what his purpose would be. He claims to be a great anti-missionary, and yet he tells the Christians it's okay to use Leviticus. He does it with 6 million of God's children. The Christians only use one. Of course, it is his son. But come, Moshiach, come. Well, I'm here. You didn't know what it was going to be like, did you? Mr. Singer, Mr. Kravitz, Mr. Skoback. And not going to the scroll of remembrance, by the way, Kravitz and Skoback goes for everybody in your organization. If your organization doesn't start teaching this book and come correct, show a little humility, show a little being humble, and go tell your flock, and I know it's vast. And Toby, he's got to do the same thing, and tell him, I dropped the ball. I blew it. Now, I know it's in Toby's book, too. I'm reasonably sure. I haven't actually seen it. So I know he may never do it. He may decide, I'd rather have the money to go to heaven. Or I'm just not going to believe this fellow, and I'm not going to read his proofs. Well, we'll know what kind of a person he is if that happens, huh? Charlatan. Okay, chapter 39, Jonah and the righteous servant of Isaiah 53. It's very short. I could put it on this video, but I don't like combining them. All this, chapter 21, part 10. It's too hard for people to find on YouTube. There's 11 of them, which is a very important chapter to find and look at. But I got to turn this off to restart it for a new 30 minutes.